Hey everyone. Hope you're having a good Wednesday night. Tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about pregnancy and exercise. Kind of when do you go and when do you say no? When do you push yourself and when do you hold back? And what are some factors that might impact that? So before I jump into that, I just want to touch on the fact that pregnancy as a fitness athlete can be incredibly difficult. You deal with the loss of your identity because you don't get to be necessarily that strong, really accomplished athlete that you were because you physically can't do or aren't able to push yourself nearly as hard as you were before. Your body changes, size, shape, your hormones change. You may feel like a loss of control over your emotions. Basically, things just change. And in a way, you don't necessarily own your own body. You do, but things are really, really changing and you're growing another human. So just the process in general can be incredibly difficult. So I want to acknowledge that before I even start talking about when you go and when you say no. But one of the first things to be aware of is it's important to know why you're doing what you're doing. So when you're struggling with maybe not being who you were, not being able to do what you used to be able to do before you got pregnant or before you had a baby, keep that in mind. Think back to why you started the journey in the first place, why you wanted to have a kid, why you wanted to bring a child into the world, and take a step back and realize it's not necessarily about what you can't do physically that you used to be able to do, but what you get to do by bringing a child into the world. So that can be just kind of mentally kind of rephrasing it or stepping back and taking a different look at it. And what helps with this really is not comparing yourself to others, because there's always that person who can run a marathon when they're pregnant or who can clean and jerk who knows how much. There's always going to be that person. But for every one of those people, there's always going to be someone else who's struggling more than you. So if you're really, really struggling with your pregnancy, maybe you had really, really bad nausea in your first trimester and you just didn't really work out and you didn't want to. That's okay. Just because your friend did doesn't mean that they're better at being pregnant or that their body is better at handling the pregnancy or that they're a better athlete than you. It just means they had an easier time being pregnant for whatever reason, and that's okay. That's okay. So when you're tempted to push yourself and maybe try something, just stop and think, is this really what's going to help me have a healthy baby? Or in the long term, is this what's going to make my pregnancy easier and my postpartum period easier? It's not. Try to take a step back from the moment and don't be in the moment and think long term. It's really, really hard to do, especially with a lot of the social pressure that's out there. But taking a step back and really thinking about what you're doing instead of maybe pushing yourself when you shouldn't, or maybe not pushing yourself enough. There's both ends of the spectrum. But just stop and think. And as an athlete, that can be really hard to do sometimes because we're kind of ingrained to push ourselves, like, how far can I go? Can I do this? Can I do that? And it's not always, can you do something? The question is, should you? And that's something that even if you're not pregnant can be difficult to wrestle with as well. And then also just give yourself some grace. I mean, growing a human is a really, really hard thing to do, and it takes 9 months. So after you have a baby, if you're not back in the speed or the time frame that you want to be back, let it be. It's okay, because you spent 9 months growing a kid. I mean, 9 months in, 9 months out is a popular saying. It's not necessarily true. It's not true for everyone, but give yourself grace and give yourself some time. And focus on what really matters. And sometimes in the moment when you really want to compete or you really miss doing something, or there's a part of you that was always a part of you that is no longer a part of you, that can be really hard and really tricky. But taking a step back, looking at the situation as a whole, not comparing yourself to others, and giving yourself some grace and allowing those boundaries that your body is placing on you to be boundaries, but to be okay with those boundaries, all that stuff can kind of help. So when to go and when to say no. A lot of the times, if you listen to your body and you don't necessarily let your emotions cloud your judgment, sometimes you can often figure it out yourself, but doing that is a really, really hard thing to do. So I just wanted to take a week and talk more about the mental health aspect and the mindset aspect of being pregnant and exercise, because that can be something that's really difficult to deal with. And in our society, a lot of pressure is put on people to be in the best shape of their lives while they're pregnant, or to bounce back really quickly, when in reality that doesn't always happen, or maybe that's just not the path for you. So if you have any questions, concerns, want to chat about anything pregnancy, exercise related, feel free to shoot me a message, and have a great night.